For 3 years, I fought cancer completely alone. Not a single visit, not a single call from the family I had given everything to. And just when I thought they were gone forever, they came back, not with love, but with greed, standing at the door of my $2 million beach house. That's when I realized the truth. Sometimes the cruelest battles don't happen in hospitals. They happen at home. Before we go on, I would like to thank you for sparing some time to listen to my story. If you don't mind, please like this video and be part of my channel. This will give me support. So without further wasting much time, let's start my story. The last day of treatment was quiet. No trumpets. No parade. Just the steady beeping of an infusion pump as the final drops of chemical mercy emptied into my vein. For 3 years, this chair, this room, this beige, antiseptic world had been the battlefield. I, Vivian Sterling, 65, retired middle school teacher, became a soldier in a war one never enlisted in. I fought for the simple privilege of seeing another sunrise. Patricia, the head nurse with the kind round face, unhooked me. "That's it, Viv," she said, her smile warm enough to soften the steel edges of the ward. "You did it." Time to ring the bell. She nodded at the small brass bell fixed to a plaque. I'd watched others ring at tears, balloons, families cheering. Victory sounded like hope, but my chair beside me was empty. No balloons, no flowers, only the loudness of being alone. I stared at the bell's polished face and felt nothing, no joy, just bone-deep exhaustion. Ringing it would be a lie. Victory is something you share. I won this war alone. Not today, I rasped. "I think I'll just go home." Patricia's smile faltered into a look. I'd seen on her before professional sympathy that knows too much. She'd watched that empty chair for 3 long years. The first cut was the diagnosis, stage 3 ovarian cancer. The word shattered the quiet shape of my retirement. The second cut came an hour later when I called my son, Marcus. I sat in my car in the parking garage, a pamphlet trembling in my hand. He answered in a rush, keys clacking, voice clipped. "Everything okay? I've only got a minute deadline. I have some news, baby," I said, the words catching. "They found something." "It's cancer." Silence. Not the stunned silence of love and impatient calculation. "Oh," he said finally. "Okay, that's tough. Look, I'm swamped. Let me free up some bandwidth, then we'll circle back tonight. Just hang in there, okay?" Circle back. Bandwidth. He spoke to his dying mother like a memo. He didn't ask if I was scared. He didn't ask what I needed. He put me in his schedule. That was the day I learned my son, the boy whose knees I bandaged and fevers I cooled, was a stranger. The cuts kept coming. My daughter-in-law, Sasha Polished, camera ready, a realtor with ring light empathy, called once. "Vivian, we're devastated. Praying for you. Let us know if you need anything." A week later, as clumps of my hair slid into the sink after my first chemo, she posted a carousel, she, Marcus, and my grandson Jamal on a spontaneous Aspen trip. "Family is everything," the caption read. Blessed. I stared at their beaming faces in a winter wonderland and felt loneliness sit in the room like a second body. The worst cut was surgery, a full hysterectomy. I woke in a fog of pain. The visitor's chair was empty. A nurse said my son had called big presentation. He sent his love, might stop by on the weekend. He never came. That was the day I stopped waiting. I stopped checking my phone. I stopped scrolling Sasha's curated life like a glutton for punishment. I accepted the silence. The people I'd poured myself into saw my crisis as an inconvenience. So I fought. Through nausea and night sweats and fear, I fought for myself. And I won. But the woman who shuffled out of that infusion center frail, gaunt, alive was not the woman who went in. The soft, trusting mother had died somewhere along the way. What survived was leaner, scarred, and still-spined. A week after my final treatment, as I tried to stitch a life back together in my small Atlanta home, the phone rang San Francisco area code. A lawyer, my brother, Walter Bishop, had passed. The news hit, heavy and familiar. Walter and I had been close once. He was a world-renowned architect, brilliant and solitary, pouring his love into lines and light. We spoke a few times a year. He knew I was sick. He was the only one who truly did. Mrs. Sterling, the lawyer said, voice careful. Your brother made arrangements. He was concerned about your well-being. And then I understood. For 3 years, on the first of every month, an anonymous cashier's check for $5,000 appeared in my mailbox. A holding company I couldn't place. The money that kept me afloat, paid for meds insurance, wouldn't touch, kept my home out of foreclosure. It was Walter. My quiet brother had been my guardian angel. He named you sole heir, the lawyer continued. His residence in the Outer Banks' new construction, designed by him. Appraised just over $2 million. $2 million. A beach house. I, Vivian Sterling, living on a teacher's pension and secret charity, was suddenly wealthy. Atlanta had nothing left for me but ghosts. After the first paperwork, I packed what mattered, sold the house that felt like a prison, and drove east to the sea. The house stole my breath. Not a house, an idea made wood and glass. Stilts over sand, cedar and steel, an altar facing the wild Atlantic. Walls of glass turned sky and sea into a living mural. Inside, clean lines, quiet light, and the hush of a chapel. On the minimalist kitchen island sat an envelope. Viv, written in Walter's precise hand, my dearest Vivian. If you're reading this, I'm gone and you survived. I knew you would. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I was fighting my own small war. I built you my final project. I pictured you here, facing sunrise, healing. A fortress of solitude. Let it keep out the world and its cruelty. Live here. Be peaceful. Be free. You've earned it. Walter tears cut warm paths down my face. This wasn't an inheritance. It was love shaped into architecture. A sanctuary built by the only person who saw me completely. The ocean's heartbeat filled the room, and for the first time in years, peace flickered to life. Sasha discovered my new life the way she discovers everything online. She combs public records for sport deeds, taxes, transfers, forever hunting the next big thing. On a Tuesday, on a whim, she searched my name, expecting nothing. In her mind, I was still the sick teacher in a modest bungalow, drowning in medical bills. Then the screen lit up, a deed transfer recorded a week ago. Grantor, estate of Walter Bishop. Grantee, Vivian Sterling. 5,000 square foot oceanfront residence. Outer Banks, assessed value. $2.1 million. She must have stared, latte cooling in her manicured hand. The inconvenient mother-in-law they avoided for 3 years had not only survived. She was rich. The news ran through their curated household like fire. I can hear her call to my son, even now high, breathless, greedy. Marcus, you won't believe this. Your mother is rich. In an instant, the narrative shifted. The woman too heavy to love became an asset to acquire. 3 years of silence vanished under the bright glare of a dollar sign. Their ambush was a masterclass in manufactured concern. A week later, a black luxury SUV climbed the sandy drive to my sanctuary. I sat on the cedar deck, wrapped in a blanket, watching gulls carve the wind when the crunch of tires snapped the quiet. The doors opened and out poured family suddenly found. Suddenly frantic. Sasha, led in linen and oversized sunglasses, beach chic and camera ready. Marcus followed, crisp polo and loafers, a boardroom man pretending to love salt air. Behind them trailed Jamal, 16, lanky, face lit by his phone, the boy who never called once in 3 years. They carried Lila's champagne, a gourmet gift bag. They weren't visiting. They were staging a love bombing intervention. I didn't rise. I didn't smile. The woman who once would have run to them had been burned away. The stranger who remained waited. Sasha spotted me and unleashed a brilliant counterfeit smile. "Vivian?" she cried, voice lacquered with syrup. "We were so worried. We drove straight here, devastated about Walter and you, here alone after everything." I stood, slow and deliberate, my body still stiff from chemo, and walked to the porch. They arranged themselves into a tableau of concerned Marcus clutching champagne, Jamal scrolling, Sasha the spokesperson. "Vivian, honey, you look so fragile," she cooed. "We should have been here. Marcus's work, Jamal's school, we didn't want to burden you while you recovered." Their audacity was almost art. They repackaged neglect as thoughtfulness. I let the pretty words die in the salt air. I looked at them, my son unable to hold my gaze, my grandson finally glancing up, my daughter-in-law smiling like a mask. 3 years of silence. 3 years of agony. And now, on a $2 million doorstep, arms full of gifts, mouths full of resurrection, I took a breath of clean ocean air, looked at each of them, and in a voice not angry, not sad, just profoundly calm, I said 3 words. "Who are you?" The words landed like a slap. The syrupy air evaporated. Their smiles froze. Sasha's painted mouth opened and closed. Marcus stepped forward, stunned. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "It's me, Marcus." I studied the man wearing my son's face and felt nothing. No tug, no ache. The cancer had burned away illusion, leaving the hard ash of truth. "I'm sorry," I said, polite as a stranger. "I don't believe we've met." My son would never let his mother walk through 3 years of hell alone. Color drained from Marcus's cheeks. Sasha recalibrated, fast and shameless. Her concern deepened into tragic pity. "Oh my God," she whispered to him, touching his arm. "It's the chemo brain. Memory loss. She doesn't recognize us." She twisted my truth into a diagnosis with the grace of a con artist. Jamal finally lifted his eyes. "Grandma?" He ventured, the word strange on his tongue. "I'm sorry, young man," I said gently. My grandson wouldn't let his grandmother go through surgery without a single call. The woman you're thinking of waited for that call. She grieved for it, but that woman is a stranger to me. I turned back to Sasha and Marcus, my eyes clear as sea glass. "So you've mistaken me. You're confusing me with someone who still belongs to you. That woman died quietly in an empty hospital room sometime last year." I let it settle clean, devastating truth. Then my voice shifted to the teacher's tone I kept for hallway trouble. "Now you are strangers on my private property. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I stepped inside and closed the solid cedar door with a gentle click, the sound of a chapter ending. I leaned against the cool wood. My heart beat slow and steady. I had told the truth, and for the first time in a long time, I was free. Say continue, and I'll deliver part 2, their legal attack, the locked file, the investigator, and the first stunning counterpunch. The fallout from my 3 quiet words was immediate and predictable. Humiliated on my porch, Sasha and Marcus dropped the act and reached for a weapon. The day after their performance, a sheriff's deputy with kind eyes handed me a thick packet on my cedar steps. I thanked him, took the papers to Walter's long table, and read every line. Emergency conservatorship. On paper, I was a tragic figure, mind ravaged by chemo. Memory shattered proved, they claimed, by my failure to recognize my own son. For my safety, they petitioned, the court should hand them control of my life and finances. It was a clever piece of fiction. They had twisted my clearest truth into a medical diagnosis. They wanted to erase me legally before I could expose them. 6 months ago, I would have shaken. Today, I didn't flinch. I remembered Walter's letter, Fortress. He'd left me more than walls, he'd left me tools. I walked to his office, sunlit, spare. The ocean spread like a map, and looked at the one thing I'd avoided, a black 4-drawer file cabinet locked. On his key ring, among the ordinary brass, was a small, ornate key with nowhere obvious to go. I tried it. The lock turned with a satisfying click dot inside, crisp files in Walter's precise script. At the very front, one word, Vivian. My hands trembled as I opened it. Not old photos, not sentimental notes. A professionally bound report private investigator, 5 years old. Subject, Marcus and Sasha Sterling. Walter, quiet, brilliant, fiercely protective, had shared my unease. He'd done what men like him do. He bought the truth. Page after page peeled back their glossy facade. Credit cards bled under the weight of designer habits. Defaulted business loans in Sasha's name. Reckless investments in Marcus's. A life built on borrowed shine. There was a Bali trip during my worst chemo hotel suites that cost more than my annual teacher's salary. There were shopping binges that maxed out a dozen cards. And there was my son, moving money like a desperate magician. Always one breath ahead of collapse. This inheritance wasn't windfall to them. It was oxygen, a bailout, and they would do anything, destroy anyone to get it done at the back, a card, Arthur Vance, investigations. Elegant, understated. I called. His voice was a low, gravelly baritone, weary and unsurprised by human nature. When I said Walter's name, it warmed. He was a good man, Arthur said. Smart as he was rich. He told me, my sister is good and trusting, and the world is full of sharks. Make sure she's protected. I told Arthur everything, the 3 years of silence. The ambush on my deck, the 3 words, the conservatorship. He listened, grunting softly now and then. A man assembling a puzzle he'd solved 100 times. They're predictable, he said at last, almost pleased. When charm fails, they attack. Conservatorship is page 1 of the playbook. But with what Walter left you, not a chance in hell. Arthur wasn't just a finder. He was a strategist. He agreed to help for Walter, and I sensed, for the clean satisfaction of winning against greed. I hired a lawyer from Wilmington, small, sharp, steel-trap mind, an estate litigator who didn't waste adjectives. Together, we built our counterpunch. Arthur traced their current footprints with surgical precision. 2 fresh, massive loans already wobbling. A down payment placed on a bigger house in a wealthier suburb 3 days after they discovered my inheritance. And the crown jewel, a credit application for a multi-million-dollar personal line of credit the day after they left my porch using my beach. House as proposed collateral. My lawyer's plan was simple and devastating. We wouldn't only defend my competence. We'd put their motive on trial. We would show a court the exact second love bloomed in their hearts, the minute money entered the picture. On one condition, I said, any competency evaluation, any deposition happens here. Not in a city office. In my home. In the fortress Walter built. Let them walk the floors they tried to steal. A date was set. A long table brought into the great room. The Atlantic framed behind like a witness. The trap was ready. The day of the deposition, my sanctuary became a courtroom. A long mahogany table split the great room. The Atlantic roared behind the glass like a living witness. They arrived dressed for victory, Sasha in a knife-sharp suit, Marcus in a practiced frown, their lawyer wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. They walked through my door as if measuring where their furniture would go. They expected a confused patient. They got a teacher. We began with the performance he'd rehearsed 100 times slow, patronizing questions delivered in a syrup-sweet tone. Mrs. Sterling, he said, head cocked. What's the date today? August 22nd, I answered. Your address. I recited it, number lane, zip clean as chalk on a board. He moved closer, sensing no stumble to land on. Let's talk about July 16th. Your son and his wife visited. Correct? They arrived on my property, I said, and you failed to recognize them. You said, who are you? Correct? That is what I said. He offered the stenographer a small, triumphant smile. You understand how that indicates cognitive decline amnesia, perhaps caused by your treatments. I looked at him, then at the two people who had trained him to speak for them. I let the polite witness mask slip. Counselor, I said, voice like winter glass. I'm a retired teacher with a master's in history. I can list the kings and queens of England from the Norman conquest forward without stopping for water. My cognition isn't on trial. The definition of family is, I turned to Marcus. I answered your lawyer. Now answer me. What was the date of my hysterectomy in 2023? What is the name of my oncologist? The chemotherapy drug that dropped me to the floor for a week? His mouth opened and closed. Nothing. You want control of my life? I said softly, every word a gavel. But you can't name a single detail of the 3-year fight I waged to keep it. That isn't memory loss. That's a record of abandonment. Their lawyer cleared his throat, shuffled papers, tried to reclaim the stage. He never got it back. My attorney, small, steady, all edge, slid a folder into the light. Mr. Sterling, she began, gentle as a scalpel. You say you're deeply concerned for your mother. Is that right? Yes, he said, relief flooding his voice. Of course, and that concern explains your complete absence during her treatment. The question hung in the air like a bell. He tried Wordsworth, obligations, not wanting to burden me, but under oath the excuses sounded as thin as they always were. My lawyer pivoted to Sasha and laid the first nail. On May 10th, 2024, she said, lifting an American Express statement, while my client was in intensive care after major surgery, you and your husband were at the Four Seasons in Bali in a $5,000 a night suite. Explain how that trip demonstrated your concern. Sasha's practice cool cracked. She muttered something about non-refundable tickets, about stress. My lawyer didn't blink. She placed 2 fresh documents on the table, the ones Arthur Vance had dug from the digital. Sand. A down payment on a larger home, 3 days after you discovered this inheritance, she said evenly. And a credit application dated the day after your visit using Miss. Property, she gestured to the ocean, as collateral. Shall we read the amounts aloud, or will you stipulate motive? Silence. Their lawyer stared at the numbers, then at his client's pale faces, and finally at the life raft slipping away. He asked for a recess. They huddled at the window, 3 figures whispering against the endless sea. When he returned, his voice was smaller. My clients wished to withdraw their petition, retreat, but not absolution. We're pleased to hear it, my lawyer said, voice clear as a bell on a winter morning. Please also inform your clients we'll be filing a counterclaim for emotional distress, harassment, and the malicious filing of a fraudulent action. We'll see you in court. The fallout was swift. Their lawyer dropped them. The curated circle drifted off, noses twitching at the scent of ruin. We filed. We won. The judgment was significant. I never expected to see $1. It wasn't about money. It was the record, the truth, stamped in the language they respected most. I wasn't the hysterical woman they painted. I was the survivor they abandoned. A year later, the house was no longer a fortress. It was a home. The salt air stitched me together in ways medicine couldn't. I set up a small private trust to guard the life I had rebuilt. A silent gate no petition could breach. We marked the summer with a dinner on the deck. The sky melted from orange to violet over the water. The long table Walter designed glowed in candlelight. My guests were not the family I was born to, but the family I chose. Dr. Evans, the oncologist who guided me without ever once speaking down to me. Patricia, my favorite chemo nurse, whose smile steadied my hands. Sarah and Maria, sisters in arms from the infusion chairs. Our bond a quiet steel only those who've walked through fire can recognize. We ate and laughed and did not talk about sickness. We talked about books, gardens, bad television, good soup, and the clean astonishment of waking up without fear. I looked around the table and felt the vast, gentle weight of belonging. This was family, not obligation, not performance, just people who show up. No questions asked and hold your hand in the dark. Walter built me a sanctuary. I filled it with life. The old family tried to steal my future and, in doing so, handed me a better one stripped of pretense, full of truth. I raised my glass to the darkening sea, to my brother's careful hands, to the new faces glowing in candlelight, and to the quiet, uncheckable strength of a woman who walked through hell and came out the other side, not just alive, but finally truly free.